did you bring up IPV?
It was spoken up, Lorraine spoke about it, and I think another person from like Hewitt, it was brought up. And
Did she was really just receiving
receiving
information, she wasn't commenting on it? Because that's such a huge promise that has never been fulfilled, and if we received anywhere near the amount of funding we were promised, it would really free up other funds.
Right now it's at
16 or 17% of the 40 that was promised, yeah.
So
Yes,
it was
a
brought
big
up.
deal with federal elected officials.
It was addressed. It was brought up. There was
Good.
no, and we also talked about the need to watch this new tax reform that's coming out.
Right.
That's going to be a biggie because it hasn't been addressed in some things. So there are things that will come out that we're going to really have our ear to the ground. So.
Not unless you want to know everything that's going on in my summer outside, of course.
Thank you. You can share that later.
No, me neither.
Just that I also attended that event with Karen. It was very interesting. You know, these politicians, they of course are in the midst of all this going on, but I think that it really makes a difference when people come in for an event like this, because then you put a face on it. People can actually talk to some stories or experiences, and it brings it home a little bit more. And there were comments by her that day and questions where you saw that maybe it did make a difference because maybe she didn't clearly understand something about it. So, of course, when you have somebody like Lorraine Deller that can sit and explain everything so wonderfully and represent all of our children in such a great way, it really does make a difference, and that was obvious. And you know, also to piggyback on what Karen said, how she did talk about what a difference it made to get involved. You know, people think, oh, if I make a phone call or I send an email, it's not going to make a difference, and I'm busy, but it really does. So if all of us can go into our community and tell everybody that we know, please just take a couple minutes and send this email or make this phone call, it really does have a difference in the outcome.
I know Mrs. Reed and Mrs. Coles and I were at the NISBA School Summer Law Conference, whatever it was called, earlier, that was a few weeks ago. And it was interesting, just, you know, I think as a board member, it's important to keep informed on the legal issues that are kind of popping up around the country, not just the state. So a lot of topics covered. They blew through in about an hour, updates on practically everything school law related, and then focus on certain areas that are, I guess, hot topics, transgender issues, special education. Spent an hour on the website, compliance with the EDA, and one gentleman in Michigan who's taken it upon himself to report on school districts throughout the country. That was great. And just other, you know, disciplinary matters and things like that. So I think it's, you know, it's always important for us to kind of keep learning so that we can better represent the community. A couple other, you know, less hacky events that we were at, and Mrs. Reed and I were at the funeral of Gladly, and some of our administrators were there as well. It was a huge turnout, and I think it's a testament to the impact that our education professionals have on the community. And then I was at, there was a parent of one of our students, or two of our students, I guess, who had passed away unexpectedly. And I was at the funeral, and I mentioned it only to say that at that funeral was our athletic director and the coach of the team that one of the daughters of the gentleman who passed away was on. And I thought it was important to mention that, you know, these guys took time out of their day to come pay respect. So I thought it was really like, I was like, that's just great. So I just wanted to mention that. That was it. My update. So first comment and question period. This comment period is for questions about agenda items only. It is a timed period, so it's no more than 30 minutes in length. Individuals are allowed to speak up to 3 minutes. We ask, there's no podium here, so you can stand up and with your questions, give us your name and your address in case we need to get back to you. We don't talk about individual employees or individual students. And we just ask, when you have your questions, address them to me, questions or comments, and we ask that you be respectful when you address the board. So with that, we've covered everything. We'll open up the floor to questions, comments from Mr. Kuhlman.
Robert Kuhlmass, 979 Van Buren Street. And I found it interesting that the superintendent mentioned that one of the veiled attacks on public education were charter schools, when charter schools are public schools. But they have the flexibility of hiring lesser paid teachers. So this whole campaign of I love public education is really just a protectionist activity by the educators who are grabbing into our budgets with both hands and are the true enemies of public education. Nobody doubts that public education is adequate, but it's not like they're doing anything better here in New York than they're doing in Indiana or Colorado, but it's done at twice the cost. And this money could be spent on better programs, on better buildings. We have this assortment of old buildings here. This is an old suburb. All across the country, school districts have better schools at less cost. We cost the most in the nation here, and what are we getting for money? We're getting overpaid teachers whose campaign, I love public education, is really a campaign for I love my inflated salaries and benefits. We have her predecessor has already collected, Dr. Kathy Weiss has already collected over $2 million in pension payments. Chanton, she's on to her next $2 million. And you know, and it'll just keep going. Private businesses can't afford to find benefits. We have to pay them, but we don't have to pay them at these exorbitant salaries. So this is all just a charade. This I love public education. There's nothing wrong with public education. What's wrong is that the educators have become the enemy of public education by looting our budgets and leaving us with this. And here you are. All you talk about is how can we save money on oil and gas. That's chump change. 80% of our expenses are salaries and benefits. And we have teachers who are now retiring at, they're making $125,000. They get a $90,000 school pension. They get a $36,000 Social Security pension, which we pay half of. So now, in retirement, they're making more than 99% of the Baldwin residents or Long Island residents ever made in their best year of earning. And why? Because the teachers have taken over the school board. The teachers and their colleagues have taken over the school boards and have just given us this giveaway. And I'll talk more about it later in my second.
Thank you, Mr. Kuhlman. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, we're going to move on. Board of Education approves the recommendations for services of the Committee on Special Education, Sub-CSE 504 Committee, and Committee on Preschool Special Education for October and December 2016, and January, February, March, April, May, June, and July 2017 as detailed in the Thursday mailing. Moved by Mrs. Reed.
Second.
By Mrs. Hagan. As this contains information pertaining to individual students, we do not discuss this in public. Those in favor?
Aye.
There is no computer and special education service report for this month. All right. Board of Education accepts with thanks a donation from Meadow School in the amount of $4,369 to be used for the purchase of 40 fire tablets as detailed in the Thursday mailing.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. O'Hagan,
Second.
second by Mrs. Coles. Are there any questions or comments?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Board of Education approves the Nassau BOCES final AS7 agreement for 2016-17 services as detailed in the Thursday mailing.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. O'Hagan, second by Mrs. Reed. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Board of Education approves the Nassau BOCES initial AS7 agreement for the 2017-18 services as detailed in the Thursday mailing. Moved by Mrs. Reed,
Second.
second by Mrs. O'Hagan. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye.
I just wanted to make one comment, just to be clear for the audience. One is an estimate, and the second is a final bill.
Yes.
Beginning of the year, they give us, we run a tab, let's say, based on what our expectations are.
Right,
So one of these is an actual bill.
right.
I
Yeah,
just
the end
wanted
of the year
to
is the
clarify it,
actual, yeah. And so that beginning of the year, subject to change throughout the year. Okay. Board of Education approves the district's participation in the National School Lunch Program from the State Education Department Child Nutrition Program and adopts the policy statement, certification statement, news release, public announcement, and application for free and reduced price meals/milk as detailed in the Thursday mailing. Moved by Mrs. Reed, second by Mrs. Coles. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor? Aye.
Matt, can I ask? Would you just explain briefly how this works in Baldwin? What part of what we provide is part of the state education department program? And what part of our lunch program is a vendor in Baldwin?
So, this is an approval to participate in the program, that's all that is.
Yes.
As of right now, our 5 elementary schools participate in the free and reduced lunch program, which is, I guess 3 years, this is going to be the 4th year that we participate in free and reduced lunch at the elementaries. Our middle school and our high school are not participants in the free and reduced lunch. So we do that ourselves. The program that we have at the elementary schools is, because we don't have kitchens in the elementary schools, it is a prepared meal that is warmed up at the elementary schools. It's a hot program, but it's not cooked at the school.
And it can be paid for, or, in other words, a child can purchase it.
Yes, a child can purchase it, or it can be, or if they qualify under free and reduced lunch, it would fall under whatever they would either pay nothing if it's free and then we get reimbursed for it, or they would get a reduced price
And who is the vendor for that?
for the preferred meals.
Is that part of the National School Lunch Program?
That
Does
particular
does
one,
it
that's a vendor.
Qualify?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a vendor.
We're the school lunch program. The vendor is just who we.
So that program that we have, it qualifies, right? This was issued before, we had nothing, so no.
But the vendor then has to qualify, their meals must
That's
qualify by
correct.
some
Right.
guidelines that are set by the federal
Right,
program.
and those are the nutritional
Right.
guidelines, which right now are under review and might change.
Thank you.
Let's just
For the other conversation.
Yes. Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Board of Education approved the contract from Westbury Union Free School District for special education services to one Baldwin student who will be parentally placed and attending a private parochial school for the 2017-18 school year as detailed in the Thursday mailing.
So moved.
Moved by Mrs. O'Hagan.
Second.
Second by Mrs. DeRussiter. Are there any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Aye.
Board of Education approves the contract for 12 students attending private residential schools and 1 student attending a 4201 school for the 2017-18 school year as detailed in the Thursday mailing. Those schools are the Center for Developmental Disabilities, one student at an amount of $36,091. The school Cerebral Palsy Association of Nassau, 3 students at a cost of $44,015 a student for a total of $132,040. Mary Haven Center of Hope, 1 student for a cost of $57,301. Sale at Ferncliff, 2 students at a cost of
It's SAIL.
SAIL. Yeah, it's not a sale. At Ferncliff, 2 students, the cost is $56,738 a student for a total of $113,476. The Martin DeForest School, 4 students, the cost at $34,855 a student for a total cost of $139,420. Woodward Children's Center, 1 student at a cost of $40,608. And the Mill Neck Manor School, 1 student for a cost of $64,184.40. Moved by Mrs. Reed.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Maresco. Are there any questions or comments?
No.
Okay. All in favor, sorry. Aye.
Aye.
All right. As board president, I am calling for consideration of the business items in tonight's agenda as consent items. This includes business items 7 through 24. These items include cooperative bids, special services contracts, and obsolete equipment. There's some insurance in there. Insurance in there as well. Are there any items members would care to withdraw from consideration under the consent agenda for further discussion and a separate vote? Okay, do I have a motion then to approve the consent agenda, including business items 7 through 24? Moved by Mrs. Coles. Seconded by Mrs. Reed. Are there any questions or comments? Talk about that, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, and now we need to vote.
Now with the vote
Put
to
them in.
approve.
Is that now, need a motion to accept items 7 through 24 as part of the consent agenda? Moved by Mrs. Reed.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Dreska. All those in favor?
Aye.
Board of Education approves the updated use of facilities report for July 2017 through June 2018 as detailed in the third day on. Moved by Mrs. Reed.
Second.
Second by Mrs. Dreska. Are there any questions or comments? Those in favor? Aye. All right, the Board of Education adopts the following policy. Policy 4000, broad educational goals. Policy 4010, equivalence in instructional staff and materials. Policy 4311.1, display of the flag. Policy 4850, animals in the schools. Policy 6410, authorized signatures. Policy 6600, fiscal accounting and reporting. Policy 6650, the claims auditor. Policy 6660, independent / external audits. Policy 6670, petty cash / petty cash accounts. And policy 6690, audit committee. Moved by Mrs. Reed.
Second.
By Mrs. Coles. Does anyone have any questions or comments? Oh, okay, the spell, oh yeah, this. It's not on the policy, it's on the policy too. Okay, it says broad. Oh, it should say broad.
But it is
Broad educational goals, that's correct,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's not board education.
Yeah.
Broad. We're good, no, we're good, all right. Okay. All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
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 All right. Does anyone have anything under other? Nothing? All right. Before we move on to our second comment period, I just want to read some important dates. There will be a special Board of Education meeting Tuesday, August 29th, 2 p.m. right here at the district office. Schools are closed for Labor Day on Monday, September 4th, and then we open Tuesday, September 5th. And then our next regular Board of Education meeting is Wednesday, September 13th at 8 o'clock right here in the district office. So now,
13th?
Wednesday, September 13th. We're gonna open up the floor again to comments and questions. Same rules apply, you all remember them, I just read them about 5 minutes ago. With the one exception, again, it's a time period, no more than 30 minutes, everyone gets 3 minutes to speak. One time, 3 minutes. The only difference here is that the comment period is not limited to just agenda items, so. Floor is open.
Robert Kugelmass, 979 Van Buren Street. Two ideas which bear repeating. I read this week that Jericho has a 185-day school year, which I believe is more than what you have. They're in the top 5 of, maybe the top 2 in Nassau County. They're not resting on their laurels. Meanwhile, we have Baldwin, which is in the bottom quartile, the bottom 10. I can only go over 8 school districts whose students we outperform. So we got a way to go to get out of the bottom quartile. And what I suggested before, and what I'm suggesting again, is we need additional days. And the school year is a slacker work year. I mean, your teachers and your administrators, they have either by contract 8 or 9 months work per year. I mean, this is out of the Middle Ages. And they're the ones that are going to get our students ready for the 21st century workforce. When are they going to work a 21st century?
This
This is.
that Jericho, 8 work, okay, they may have 5
Please,
months.
this is my 3 minutes.
Go
You
ahead.
know, will you please give me that time? I need an
Reclaim your
additional
time.
10 seconds. Okay. So what I'm suggesting is you need to increase the school year. And we hear the teachers and administrators complaining, all of these tests, we need more face time with our students. But I know they're not going to give up a day to improve the educational quality of this school district. You know, because their vacation days, all 3 to 4 months a year, are too important. That's 5 weeks during the school year, 2 months during the summer, and 3 weeks of sick days and personal days, which Ms. Magna took great advantage of last year. Now,
Mr. Kugelmas, we're not talking about individual staff members here.
the board is on the wrong side of this. You're in favor, you've been in favor of inflating these salaries and so forth. But that's affected our budget, but now it's affecting the quality of our education. So that's idea number 1. And it can be done. You need to push back. You need to push back financially, you need to push back educationally to get more teacher days going.
For less.
The second is pass the play. Pass the play. This isn't my idea, this happens in Texas. And it's simple, and I mentioned this before. We have extracurricular activities like they did in Texas, the land of Friday night football. Okay? You don't get your grades, you don't pass, you don't play. You don't play football, you don't play any sports, you don't play music. And we could do that by, we start with D's and move up to C's. And we can get this school district out of the bottom quartile because we've got well-behaved students, we've got intelligent students, but they're slackers. They're slackers, they're not doing their homework. We've got an adequate teaching staff, adequate buildings, but they're slackers. You need to light a fire under them, and you can do this.
Thank you, Mr. Kugelmas. Is there any other questions or comments from? Okay. Need a motion to adjourn? Moved by Mrs. Reed.
Second.
The rest, all those in favor?
Aye.
I did.
It's so perfect.
Yeah.